Welcome to USTRAD, the United Service of India Strategic Dialogues. I am Lt Gen GS Katoch, Head Editorial Team and Council Member at the USI, your host today. And I shall be speaking to Lt BK Sharma, the Director USI, on the emerging situation in Afghanistan. Most viewers know Lt BK Sharma, especially those in the strategic field. But for those who don't, I will tell you that Lt Sharma is an acknowledged authority on the subject. He has been India's defense attaché in Central Asia at a time when the Northern Alliance offensive was in full swing against the Taliban. Subsequently, he has made a number of visits to Afghanistan and has been a part of 5 India-Afghanistan dialogues at the track 1.5 level. In one of them, I had the opportunity to accompany him on that field visit to Afghanistan. I shall draw upon Gen Sharma's deep experience and study of Afghanistan to get answers to some current and important issues. Gen Sharma, welcome to USTRAD.
Thank you very much, General Katoch. It's been a pleasure to be on our own channel, YouTube channel, and I hope we continue with this series for times to come.
Definitely. And to start off with, I'll give you a question. I will request you to answer it, which covers the wider canvas in Afghanistan. To give us a little background before we start off on the rest of the questions. And this question is that in view of the beginning of the withdrawal of US and NATO forces from Afghanistan, and which to my mind is proceeding at a faster rate than we Afghanistan watchers visualized, what is your visualization of the evolving political, economic, and security scenario in Afghanistan?
Thank you very much. In fact, most of the people who would watch this program are very well conversant with the geopolitical and security dynamics in Afghanistan, particularly in the wake of decision of Joe administration to withdraw from there. In fact, this withdrawal date of US and NATO troops has been advanced from 11th September to maybe end July. And presently, they are in the process of withdrawing from 12 odd bases all over the country. Because Taliban had made a statement that they have broken the deal with them by advancing the date of withdrawal further to 11th September from 1st May. Americans were visualizing some kind of attacks, and in anticipation, they've gone for a deployment. They have moved Eisenhower aircraft carrier in the Gulf. They've deployed some B-52 bombers there. And reportedly, one Ranger unit has been deployed in Afghanistan itself. In the meanwhile, as we know that Taliban have refused to participate in Istanbul process, and at the moment they are showing no inclination towards an intra-Afghan dialogue. There is a full-fledged confrontation, military confrontation, which is going on in 28 out of 32 provinces in Afghanistan. But most intense fighting is in the 4 provinces, namely Lagman, Baghlan, Warduk, and Helmand. And what Taliban are doing, they want to adopt a maximalist position so that they can grab maximum territory and put a pressure on Ashraf Ghani administration. So they're following a strategy of strangulation. That means they're sparing the road arteries, going towards district and provincial capital, surrounding them. Reportedly in last couple of days, 36 odd posts they've been able to sort of wind up, and they are using the local leaders to negotiate between the security forces and Taliban so that they can give them a clean escape from there without killing or mutilating them, but they take away all their weapons and equipment. Now that is what is happening. At the same time, there are some preliminary talks about power sharing, but it is leading nowhere because there is a ethno-regional political polarization within Afghanistan, which involves both problems within Pashtuns and non-Pashtuns, as we know that these are ethnic and clan-based societies. But on the positive side, there is a talk which is gaining traction, and that is of creating a unified national command to resist takeover by Taliban. It is still in the initial stages. How it pans out, we'll have to see. But more worrisome feature here is the economic stress which this country faces. As you know that about 70% of their economy is foreign aid dependent. Their expected expenditure of the government is about $12.5 billion, out of which they are only able to generate a revenue of about 2.5 billion US dollars. For more than about $7 billion, they will have to be dependent on foreign donors. Now, whether that donation comes, how fast it comes, how it is absorbed, has major implications because Afghanistan has a huge youth bulge. In fact, more than 60% of their population is below the age of 25, and unemployment rate is more than 50%. And once these people do not have government jobs and their energies are not properly channelized, they can switch sides and join the Taliban ranks or some of these other terrorist groups which are milling around in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has also suffered huge humanitarian loss. Since 2001, more than 47,000 civilians have been killed, and you have nearly about 2.7 billion refugees which are outside the country. There are about 4 million who are internally displaced. Americans too have suffered huge losses, like 2,400 odd killed, 20,000 injured, and the whole cost of war so far since 2001 has been about $2.26 trillion. So on the whole, the situation is very, very worrisome, is very flux and fluid. And I visualize that there are three possible scenarios. The first is that there would be continued heightened violence in short to near term because the Taliban have pressed home this summer offensive and they want to make maximum gain. What they are doing besides targeting the security forces, they are also going for selective assassination of intelligentsia, government officials. Sometimes they use other proxies of Taliban to do these assassination attacks. Now, it all depends how Afghan national defense and security forces are able to withstand this onslaught. If they are able to dug in their heels, then the second scenario could be one of a stalemate. And then both sides may have a motivation to go for some kind of a transitional authority being constituted and put in place. And then maybe as Ashraf Ghani has proposed, early election in which he said he won't participate. But the moot point is whether Taliban will participate in the election process or not, because the public opinion by and large is against them particularly in the light of recent killing of 85 innocent school girls in Kabul. If that scenario further generates, then we are looking at another scenario in which Taliban may take over part of Afghanistan, that is the southern and eastern provinces, at the outskirts of Kabul, and there would be perhaps a simmering kind of a civil war, a low-level civil war, wherein the warlords will also get involved. While Taliban have picked up momentum, there are initial signs of some kind of a new avatar of Northern Alliance. The son of legendary leader Ahmad Shah Massoud, he is very popular, though he doesn't have field experience. In Panjshir and all these areas of Herat, Balak, he is trying to now hobnob with other warlords and these non-Pashtun leaders, and they are trying to find some kind of a resistance there. This, coupled with National Unity Council, maybe that they may be able to avert a civil war, but this prolonged violence in Afghanistan is likely to continue.
Uh, Thank you for that very succinct answer. And in the couple of 2 months back, we had a number of high-profile visitors to Afghanistan. We had the U.S. Secretary of State, the Defense Secretary, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg of NATO. They were all there, and they all met President Ashraf Ghani, and they assured him because the Biden administration had just taken made the statement that how they would proceed further, and all these people came to assure Ashraf Ghani. And the US Secretary of State, he is stated to have told him that we have a new chapter, but it is a new chapter that we are writing together. But how much of this writing will be done together and post withdrawal? So, what do you is your view that what is the kind of support we should expect that the Afghan government can get from the United States or NATO or from any other actors, sir?
Yes, see, my assessment is that Americans have said that they would like to keep Kabul International Airport fully functional and create some kind of a green zone for the diplomatic mission. There's already some kind of a panic button which has been pressed by Australian by closing down their embassy, and they do not want other missions there to wind up. So they would deploy, and they are perhaps in talks with Turkey that some forces from Turkey and or some other NATO countries, together with some sprinkle of American troops, would be present there so that this airport is fully functional. They're also thinking of, there are about uh, 20,000 these civilian contractors which were supporting the US, NATO, and Afghan forces there. There were about 6,000 American, 6,000 were from other NATO countries, and there are about 6,000 Afghan themselves. So they are trying to talk with the Turkey to have a new kind of sort of a team of contractors there who will help Afghan national defense and security. So they will have another this sort of a team of contractors there who will substitute for Americans and NATO forces to help Afghan security forces. They're also in the process of having some kind of a intelligence setup with some of these militias there, and you will see some covert intelligence operatives remaining there. And there are serious talks going on with the son of Ahmad Shah Massoud for local intelligence. They are in talks with some of the regional countries for giving them regional bases. Pakistan has categorically declined giving those bases. They are in talk with the Uzbek authorities for taking over a base in Termez. There are also talks of maybe a base in Azerbaijan. Whether these talks fructify or not, most of the governments at the moment are reluctant, and Taliban have issued a very strong statement that any country that allows American bases, they will be at war with us. We'll have to see. But on the whole, they will follow over the horizon counter terrorism strategy. And what does it entail? Besides a certain presence in Afghanistan, they will have these bases in the Gulf, particularly in Qatar and Kuwait, which are called the mother bases. Then they would also have the aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf, from where they can operate their UAVs and some of these strike aircraft and reconnaissance mission or for the selective targeting whenever Afghan security forces require that help. The only problem here is that the time uh, from the response time is actually very long. It's about minimum 6 to 8 hours, whereas when they were based in Afghanistan, it was within an hour that they could reach anywhere. So efficacy of those combat support missions itself is a suspect. They also in talk with Jordanian to have some kind of a training arrangement where they can train the special forces of Afghanistan. As you said, that the financial support has also been assured, and I was just reading that Joe Biden has made a bid for 715 billion US dollars, the defense budget, out of which reportedly about 3.3 billion is for supporting the Afghan National Defense Forces. They've already increased some couple of $1 million, $100 million for the Afghan National Security Forces. So all this is there, but I think it will not substitute by their presence. And as you would have seen, uh, General Petrus had in his talk at Clause very categorically said that it was imperative for Americans to have minimum 3,500 troops there to make their Afghan counterterrorism strategy sustainable. That's not happened. These are other ways and means. Now, it all depends on how much of grit and determination Americans show. And going by the present geopolitical trend, it seems that they will probably offer this support.
Thank you. And the next question is that uh, what happens is that after Afghanistan has been in this kind of situation for the last 20 years since Americans came in, and by any measure, we can't say that the situation is good. It needs to be better, and it needs to a lot of pieces expected to come, should come. But going by the experience of the past when the Taliban was in power, the complete world, which does not uh, like the sort of political framework that the Taliban operates within, political or politico-religious, I would say, everybody is a little apprehensive about what would happen should the Taliban be in the driving seat in Afghanistan. So everybody uh, does feel that the withdrawal would lead to a worse security situation. So, in your view, what are the implications of the withdrawal? And should the security situation worsen on Pakistan, Russia, China, and other neighboring countries? And I'm not talking about India here because we'll save that question for later. So, what should the security situation worsen? What are the implications on Pakistan, Russia, China, and other major actors? Iran, of course, being one of them.
See, if you permit me, I would say firstly, there are two principal actors in this conflict. One is Taliban, and second is Afghan National Defense and Security Forces. I think it's very important for us to get a very realistic assessment of their relative strengths and weaknesses. So, if you permit me, I can cover this part before we get on to the other part of your question.
Yes, yes, please carry on.
Okay. So, I would say firstly, let's look at the entire terrorist ecosystem in Afghanistan. Uh, we tend to paint the whole terrorist outfit there with one brush and call them Taliban. No, as per American intelligence reports, there are more than 20 groups there, and these 20 groups they work under about certain shoras, right? And these shoras, you have basically a Quetta Shora, and under Quetta Shora, you have two main sub-shoras there. One is the Miran Shah Shora, where the Haqqani network and their principal leader, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who's a military commander. And then you have, Hibatullah Okhunzada, who is a jurist. They are there. Then they are controlling Haqqani network, and the other Taliban are in under the Peshawar Shura. There is another Shura which is under the influence of Iranian, and that is called Mashad Shura. And one more Shura is reportedly operating in some loose form called Badakhshan Shura, which controls some of these non-Pashtun so-called Taliban. Broadly, you can distribute or categorize the terrorist network there in number of clusters. First cluster is, international terrorists like Al Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, they are there. Then you have the Pak centric groups in which you have Jaish e Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Sipai Sahiba, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, and Tehrik-e-Taliban of Pakistan, and such like groups. Then you have the Eurasian cluster, in which you have the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, Islamic Jihad Council, you have Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, and such like groups. And then comes the Afghan Taliban, which itself has about 8 odd groups within itself, and Haqqani network being the most formidable out of the lot. Now, the assessed strength of Taliban, uh, Afghan Taliban, is about 65,000 hardcore fighting elements, and they are of very young profile, age ranging from 16 to 25 years, and they operate rotational basis. Sort of certain units, they come, get deployed into operations, then they go for rest and relief, and then the other, they are relieved by the but set of battalions. In addition to that, they have about 1.5 lakh Taliban militias, which are totally embedded within the Afghan society there on day-to-day basis. And they have a lot of control, and they do all the intelligence network. They have very well structured shadow organizations like provincial and district governors. They have these commissions for ulma, justice, education, health, finance, and some of them are also dealing with the NGOs. There is no dearth of finances, because most of the money is coming from the poppy cultivation. For about 54% is the production in the Taliban dominated areas, and they've also gone and plonked themselves in some of the mineral rich areas of Afghanistan. There is illegal trade of these mineral resources. We know their ideology is basically what you call is Nizam-e-Mustafa, or a Sharia-based system, and Islamic Emirat remains a non-negotiable kind of a ideology that they have. And their strategy at the broad level is a protected warfare, as we say that they say that Americans have the watches and we have the time, so they are not in a hurry. At the operation level, they're following the strategy of strangulation, as I had explained earlier. They become very, very media savvy, and they have got good diplomatic visibility now. You see, most of the countries of the region and even European countries, including Americans, are hobnobbing with Taliban. But they don't want to give up on that because if they come to power, then they will require international aid and international recognition. To that extent, I think they become far more sophisticated what they were earlier. But there are complexities and there are fault lines within this ecosystem. First is there are difference of opinions between the people who are in the negotiation team and the field commanders, and within different groups. Some of them are in favor of talks, others are not in favor of talks at all. Then there are problems with ISKP, that is Islamic State of Khorasan province, and other terrorist groups. And sometimes many people say with ISKP and Taliban, they are chips of the same block. There are instances where they've been fighting together, particularly in northern Afghanistan. And in southern Afghanistan, they are fighting against one another. So these are the complexities, and probably if people go to the negotiation table, there is an assessment that there would be certain degree of desertion from Taliban, and they may go and join the ranks of ISKP or some other terrorist organization. Now, this is the overall situation. So Taliban themselves have a lot of dilemma. In regard to national defense and security forces, since 2015 Jan, 90% of their operations are being conducted by them. Americans have only been in the advisory role or rendering them air support. And at the moment, their strength is about 300,000. There are certain inadequacies there in terms of, the number of ranks, leadership, human resource developmental issues, and things like that. Broadly, they are divided in about 6 corps all over Afghanistan. There is one Kabul division, and now they have coincided the deployment of Afghan National Police together with these cores. So it's become kind of a very well networked counterterrorism grid. But their prima donna are about 30 plus companies of special forces, and also the Afghan National Air Force, which has light combat aircraft, certain Haptors and UAVs. They've also very recently learning the lessons from the failure of auxiliary units. They raised Afghan National Territorial Army. In addition, now they're going for mass recruitment of these militias. You know, earlier some of these militias were working under the influence of warlords. Now, warlords have control of some of the militias, but most of these militias have been put under the command and control of corps commanders right up to battalion level. But there are weaknesses, as we said, that in the absence of American support, there would be problems of ISR, logistics, and air support and things like that. But the most worrisome weakness from my perspective is their delicate ethnic composition. In Afghan National Army and Police, 44% are Pashtun and 56% are non-Pashtun. And in non-Pashtun, mostly it is Tajiks who are actually in the leadership positions. For example, in the army, 39% officers are Tajiks. In the police, nearly 50% officers are Tajik. And there is so much of bad blood and mistrust between them and Taliban right from the beginning. Now, whether these people are able to pull in the same direction or not, that is a moot point. So, if this National Unity Council, if it doesn't take shape or it doesn't sort of, it doesn't solidify, and if there are reverses within the Afghan security forces, the risk of polarization and breakup in the army is very much there. And if that happens, that will inevitably lead to the civil war like situation. Presently, the chances are not there. There are no indicators to that effect, but it is the most worrisome critical vulnerability of Afghan security forces. Now coming to
And
the, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Just before you get back to that question about the impact of the withdrawal on these countries that I talked about, it came to my mind that this has always been a very paradoxical situation. That when a non-state organization comes to power, it tries to assume all the trappings of a state. It tries to become like a regular army, and the more it becomes that, the less effective it becomes. So you had, the Taliban overthrowing taking control of the government in Afghanistan, but when they put on the trappings of a state and the Northern Alliance, a non-state, attacked them, they did not fare well. Of course, other factors are there, like support from outside, etc. That is also there. But somehow it comes to my mind that when a non-state has to abide by the rules and regulations that a state should follow, they do become a little less effective. Now, back to the question that I'd asked about the implications of the withdrawal on Pakistan, Russia, China, and other neighboring countries.
yeah. So this is a very important question because uh, violence and instability in Afghanistan is going to radiate to the regional countries. It will affect Pakistan, it will to some extent affect India, but most vulnerable here are Central Asian republics because they're very small countries. And I would say Russian and Central Asian Republic, their strategic security challenges are almost very similar. We know that Afghanistan shares border, porous and rugged border with Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. And there is a history that some of the militant movements in Central Asia had found their safe haven in Afghanistan. It was the Islamic Renaissance Party, which was involved in a civil war in Tajikistan. They had their bases in northern Afghanistan. Similarly, Islamic movement of Uzbekistan was operating from the bases in northern Afghanistan. And presently, they've been able to consolidate themselves in the area of Wakhan corridor and that Gorno-Badakhshan area. Therefore, this becomes a real threat. And threat is particularly to Rashid Valley, which is in Tajikistan, and Fergana Valley, which encompasses about the territory of four odd countries. So we would see certain activism from ISKP, Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, and others. But Russians are very, very sensitive to all this. As you know, that they have a collective security treaty organization under which they have about 15,000 odd rapid reaction forces. They have a motorized division deployed along the Tajikistan border. They have bases. One is at Aini and other is Kant in Tajikistan. They've also got what you call the Regional Anti-Terrorist Center located in Bishkek. So they are in a quite an effective position to deal with that challenge. At the same time, drug traffic and others are their interests. But you see the recent statements given by Russians, they are opposed to an Islamic emirate. So I don't think while they're presently hobnobbing with Taliban that in the long run they would accept a very hardened, a radicalized Taliban regime in Afghanistan. They would look for some kind of a power sharing arrangement and then do their own bit for the reconstruction and peace building in Afghanistan. Coming to China, so far China has been free rider in the whole thing, and they've almost cultivated the Taliban, and there is a kind of an alignment between them, Pakistanis and Taliban. But they've also got a border, a very porous 100-kilometer border along Wakhan corridor, and most of these ETM people were infiltrating through those borders. Now that border has been very effectively blocked by Chinese, but most of the infiltration into Xinjiang is taking place through Central Asian republics. Their overall objectives there are that they are very mindful that if violence proliferates in Afghanistan, it will affect their BRI projects in Central Asia. They want to hedge against that. They also are interested in extension of CPAC, one prong coming through Wakhan corridor, and second is connecting Karakoram highway, particularly connectivity from Peshawar to Kabul. They've already invested in ionic copper mines, though they've not been able to extract anything from there. They're also prospecting oil in Amu Darya. So they are looking some kind of a condominium with Pakistan in a power sharing arrangement, but they are opposed to Emirate. So they will have, I think, a very nimble-footed approach and will not get directly embroiled because that will distract them from their Indo-Pacific challenge. But in terms of, some economic aid and reconstruction, they would very much be active. Now, coming to Iran, as you know, that there is a very porous border with Iran. In the past, Taliban had attacked some of Shia population in Herat and these areas. Some of the diplomats were killed. So they have some kind of a tactical rapprochement with Taliban, but they are very mindful that one of their most important condition was the US withdrawal. Now, post withdrawal, I would say there would be a reset of Iranian strategy because they don't want a Wahhabi Salafi this entanglement or encirclement both from Kurdistan side and from other ISIS side and then Taliban from this side. So they would go for a very strong hedging strategy and would not like Taliban to come to power in its entirety, but they would make a reasonable contribution in the peace building as it is. They have open railroad connectivity. They're also supplying some power. So Iran, I think, will recalibrate its strategy in a significant manner. Now, coming to Pakistan, which has been and will remain an elephant in the room, and their entire Afghan strategy has been India centric. And post withdrawal of US, now all eyes will set on Pakistan. How do they deliver? What kind of an influence they wield on Taliban? My understanding is that while they may gloss or bask in the a tactical victory, but their strategic dilemmas are going to haunt them. Be it recognition of Durand line, which in the past even Mullah Omar had declined. Then this Pashtun Tahaffuz movement is at the moment in full bloom. Tariq-e-Taliban of Pakistan, which has bases in Afghanistan, are going to attack them. And then there are other problems of this unified national council. If it forms, most of the elite of Afghanistan, they don't trust Pakistan, and they are quite opposed to their interference and cross-border terrorism. With violence also will be a refugee influx there. They have already got about 3 million odd refugees, and some more refugees will land in their lap, and they will become the factories of violence. So there are problems from that point of view. My view is that what Pakistan is trying to achieve is, while they don't want an emirate, but they want Taliban to be a major player in the power sharing arrangement, so that any new dispensation which comes in power is not only able to deem, but also not only deem, heed, but also allay their interests vis-a-vis India. So, in the worst case scenario, if that doesn't work, what they are likely to do is that they may create actually a security buffer zone on the other side, that the Afghan side of Durand line, by creating a common economic and security zone, which would be de facto controlled by Taliban, so that their interests are actually protected. And the world is also not, they can't blame them that, most of these shoras are located in their territory and they are supporting them. So this is going to be probably the policy and the strategy of Pakistan. There is also a risk of retribution from Americans. Earlier, Americans were dependent on them for withdrawal. Now that dependency is going to be over. And if Pakistanis do not mend their ways and they go overt in supporting Taliban, then they also run the risk of some kind of strikes taking place in their own territory.
Thank you, General Sharma. And now we come to the core question. What, in your view, will be the effect of the withdrawal on India? And how should India deal with the evolving Afghan conundrum? Over to you.
See, India has to very critically watch certain critical uncertainties in Afghanistan, which have a bearing on future of Afghanistan. Presently, we are not very clear what vision Taliban have about Afghanistan. They have never articulated that vision. Second issue is that what is going to happen to the ceasefire, and who will be the guarantor of that ceasefire. Connected with this is, will Afghanistan cease to be an epicenter of international jihad? In the past, it has not happened. And we have reports that some of the people post Balakot strike, these Kashmiri centric terrorist organizations, were training under the tutelage of Haqqani network. Then there are problems about disarming, demobilization, and reconstitution of these armed cadres. We have no clarity. We have no clarity on amendment to the constitution, protection of women's rights, minorities. We see how it affected, because some of our six brothers were massacred there, and India had to sort of repatriate them and get them sort of some kind of a shelter here. We are not very sure about the safe sanctuaries that are existing in Pakistan. So on the whole, I think there are a large number of challenges that India will face. And the most important challenge or formidable challenge here is the risk to our missions and the project, because Pakistan may like to embarrass India in in Afghanistan. So we have to be very, very careful. But we also enjoy a tremendous goodwill there, in fact, and that has got its historical basis. And post 2001, India has been one of the major contributor in the peace building in Afghanistan. You know that we've invested $3 billion in about 116 projects in 31 provinces, which are very, very popular with Afghan population. We've also given them air and sea corridors and promoted the business international shows together with Americans and other countries. We helped them during COVID and certain food famine crisis in the recent 2 years. So on the whole, we have a very good image there, and that runs across the ethnic spectrum of Afghanistan. We've also rendered them good military aid in terms of helicopter gunships and some other military aid, and particularly we been training more than 1,000 Afghan security forces personnel in our academies, giving them scholarship, medical visa, then certain beds have been earmarked in our military hospitals for their casualties, some scholarship schemes for the next of kin of these martyrs there. So India, I think we have a tremendous advantage. Now, no matter what we say, no other country has this much of an experience in peace building and civil infrastructure development of Afghanistan. So this is an advantage that we can leverage while mitigating certain risks to our assets there. And I think if any power sharing arrangement comes there, and it is a Afghan owned, Afghan led, and Afghan controlled, India can offer its services for in terms of economic aid, rebuilding and capacity building of their security forces, and also in terms of diplomatic support to see that the new dispensation there gets good recognition. So these are some of the things, and at the same time, at the moment, I think we are a bit isolated as far as high table is concerned. We need to work together with Iran, Central Asian republics, and Russia because there is more convergence of our interests than divergence vis-a-vis China and Pakistan. So we need to work on that format as well. And I would very strongly advocate that we need to have an interlocutor and a very specially constituted team at the National Security Council Secretariat, which should actually guide our Afghanistan policy and strategy. So on the whole, I think India has come out to be a very, very credible player because we've been very, very consistent and we have a lot to deliver in building a new Afghanistan. If you recall that we did not have good relations with Mujahid that time and we had wound up. But after Mujahids, they fell apart. It was India which was very much in demand. Everybody embraced us there. And today, India enjoys excellent relationship with the top leaders of non-Pashtun and the Pashtun leaders as well. So our acceptability there is across the ethnic divide, and I think that's a very good factor. And all that we need to do is we need to be very nimble-footed and make very realistic assessment and then take bold decisions and act with a sense of urgency in peace process there. And if anything that comes under the aegis of United Nations, for example, Ashraf Ghani has been saying, and even Americans are working on that, that now the new peace process should be under the aegis of United Nations Security Council, and in which Afghanistan, that UN mission, assistant mission in Afghanistan will have a lead role, then India will not shy away from deploying its resources. I'm not talking about boots on ground, but other resources for the betterment of Afghanistan.
Thank you, General Sharma. Thank you for a very enlightening and a very precise and deep analysis of the situation there. The last part of your thing has covered the next point that I had, but it has been covered about the critical uncertainties that, in your view, will have a bearing on the future of Afghanistan. The uncertainties are definitely there, but there can be many things. Every cloud has a silver lining, and we do hope that this cloud will also have a silver lining. Whether the future of Afghanistan results in a successful presidential democracy or a successful parliamentary democracy. And there's also a model, uh, consociational democracy. That is the sort of democracy which is existing in Lebanon, where a number of social groups have come to an agreement to share political power. And in Lebanon, which at one time was really in a deep mess for 8 9 years, it was in a terrible situation. It is again a oasis of some sort of stability in the Middle East. So maybe that form of government may be good, or maybe the Swiss form of government, where different ethnic groups or different areas have uh, a, a great measure of sovereignty. Now, which one will work? One doesn't really know, but we will hope the best for the people of Afghanistan. And with that, sir, I will thank you for a very enlightening discourse on the situation in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Katoch. It's been pleasure to sort of participate in this show together with you. Thank you very much. Thank you.